Great. And everyone, feel free to come on with questions as we go, but keep it pretty informal. But save it for the end, whatever you want, whatever's easier for you. Throw it in the chat or just come online and start speaking. Thanks for having me. We're going to talk about sales and marketing. Um, and sales and marketing is tough because like there's so many different ways to do this, but I'm just going to talk about what I've seen in my experience. And if you have questions, please feel free to reach out, whether it's now or later on. A bit about me, and I'm not sure why they go away. Okay, good. A bit about me. So I had a cardiac arrest, and I have the view of a patient because I have an ICD in my chest. So that's through Medtronic, and so that gives me interesting insights into how big companies work, but then how that technology works from a cardiology perspective, both on a clinical level, but also what you experience as a patient, which gives you unique insights. So think about your life as you go into the med device career. Maybe a family member or friend or yourself have some form of med device in your life, and how can you learn from those companies and how the patient education is, or the procedure itself, or failure rates of different things. Spent some time at Sunnybrook and then at Canavi, a startup that's moved into scale up out of North York there in Toronto. My daughter has cochlear implants, so that's another avenue that I get a lot of insight from a more of a D2C type, direct to consumer type of view of the world. They're the number one in the space, in the audiology space, and her cochlear implants, a lot, there's a lot of material for patients. And so you get to learn a lot about different things you can leverage from here into my past career in cardiology, or even now focus on oncology. So always keep your eyes open for where you can take stuff and use it. Spent some time at Bayless. They got bought by Boston. Spent some time at Boston and saw an opportunity to create Lanick Medical, which is a really exciting startup that I'm proud to be the co-founder of with my partner Thomas Fletcher. What we're going to cover today, there's another talk up there from 2023, and so I tried to switch it up a little bit. I spent a few hours this past week putting this together, and I wanted to look at it more from a pre-seed stage, seed stage, and Series A, looking at sales and marketing and what's important as you go through scaling your business. Because I figured most of this crowd is probably in that area. And if you're looking at working at even a Series A or later stage company, they have pretty defined processes and things. So you sort of just have to subscribe to what they do there. But if you're starting a young startup or you're starting one yourself, there's a bit more flexibility, and I thought what could be knowledge that could help you get a bit further without wasting too much time, because time is a precious resource in a startup. I'm not going to cover, Series B or later stages, because honestly, any Canadian startup typically gets acquired by that point. That's just the reality of when you get to Series B, you're looking to scale geographically quite a bit, talking more about going to Europe, Middle East, Asia in some respects. And at that point, enough people have seen you in the US and Canada, and they're looking to acquire you. And they're the ones that have the sales relationships in those relationships to grow your product in those countries. This you probably see various views of this. I think Ash Moira is one of the better views on what this looks like in my perspective. So I tried to mimic this a little bit, but essentially pre-seed, these timelines are not, solidified in stone. They're sort of flexible, but you have your pre-seed, your seed, and your Series A round. So that sort of kind of denotes what kind of activities you're going to be doing at each stage of the business, whether you're starting a startup yourself and growing it, or joining a startup. Joining a pre-seed company and coming in with, here's how we did marketing at Boston Scientific. You can't do that. You're going to cripple that startup and the processes and everything. So it's just important to have a different lens as you go through each stage. And so typically around seed stage, you're looking at 1 million in revenue, and then Series A, 10 million, and going from there. And And every day you're in production, I think that's just one of the most critical things I've learned as I started a company is, and I know there's regulations to consider, but it's the mentality of every day you should be producing something, work that pushes the needle forward. And when you have that attitude, you get a lot of progress, not just in days, but in weeks, months. And then you look back 12 months and there's a significant amount of progress. So it's important to have that mentality. I'm not going to go into too much detail on these companies. I just want to highlight the difference in the path that any company will take. So Molly, which, really exciting company. Actually, it probably came out of the Toronto ecosystem. You guys probably know better than I do. I don't know too much about it, but it started in 2018-ish and got to a point of raising Series A. And then very recently, M&A by Stryker. Bayless Medical, that's where I joined for a few years, and that started back in like 86. And it was a distributor that turned into a device manufacturer. And that went through M&A with Boston Sci and Moleculite 2013. Now, I think it just raised its Series C not too long ago. And who knows what their story is, right? So just to show you, I'm already wrong on what I said in the agenda. That Series B is sort of when they get acquired, and maybe that's the story for Moleculite in the near future. Who knows? Or they grow into this powerhouse. But what I really want to highlight here is just every path is different. Every company is different. There's no cookie cutter. This is exactly how you do it. And so it's just important to recognize that as you go through, and especially as you have a sales and marketing lens on what you do. Every company is going to be different. So it's really interesting. Poor commercialization is killing tons of startups, especially in medtech and digital health. I think probably many of you are scientists or engineers or more science focused. Maybe there's some business folks on the line, but I don't know if anyone's ever, there's a few companies out there that maybe just didn't have the right science or the right engineering of the product, but really it's about commercialization that kills companies and not producing every day and not hitting timelines. All of those things are critical. And so don't discount sales and marketing. And I think what's really important, don't discount the 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 expertise that a good salesperson and good marketing people bring to the team. They can really make a big difference. And sales and marketing is as important in pre-seed as it is in Series A and later stages. It just looks quite different. The sales and marketing person that's only ever had a career at one of the big four, big five companies, probably not going to thrive very well at a pre-seed or seed stage company, maybe even Series A. I'm not even sure they're going to do that well. So they could. It just really depends on that personality, because even within large orgs, there's an interesting demographic of salespeople where some are more of those new adopter type people and they excel at selling the new products. And then there's others that are just better at, long-term relationships, pumping in and optimizing the account to get more product in that account. So really important. One thing I hope you take away is that sales and marketing is important, and that it happens at all stages of the company. So pre-seed stage, I'm sure you've seen different flavors of this, just to help level set everyone. 0 to 24 months, typically around 100K to 1 million, and that comes from these sort of different groups. Again, every path is different. Where you're using these funds, the number one thing, and I think a lot of people miss, is speaking to potential customers. Probably the most important thing you can do, and the most critical thing you can do when you're working at a pre-seed startup. If you haven't had a customer communication almost every week or every 2 weeks, you're not moving fast enough and you're not having enough conversations. You have to put yourself out there. You have to be uncomfortable. Some people are going to say you're crazy, and you just have to keep going and sculpt your understanding of what the real problem is that you're trying to address. Looking at business formation stuff at this stage, early R&D, market research, filing of IP, limited team hiring. I'm not going to go into any of these because that's not sales and marketing, but just really want to highlight some of the things that you typically see at a pre-seed stage. But the most important thing is speaking to those potential customers. Don't just sit in your lab and develop something, or on your workbench and develop something and think that you're going to one day unveil it to the world and it's going to attract all this attention because it's not. Um, you want to start doing your market research. What's the total market size, addressable market size, targetable market size? There's reports out there you can get. A lot of incubators can hook you up with different reports. I'm never a fan of all of these things. I'm more of a fan of what you can get from real credible data. So, for instance, oncology is moving towards value-based care, and they actually publish all the clinics that have moved to value-based care. So I know from a bottom-up approach how many people are moving in this direction and what that target market is, right down to their address. So anytime you can find data like that, I find that way more valuable than this sort of lofty $10 billion market size stuff. You really want to understand that target market size um, rather than the global total addressable market. I think you want to really understand who's actually going to buy and why are they going to buy. So why are they going to buy? What do people use instead of you? You know, there's that Clayton Christensen video out there. You could probably search it, just type in his name. He's from Harvard Business School. Unfortunately passed away, I think, a few years ago. But search Clayton Christensen and milkshake and job to be done. You'll see the video. Um, Pretty awesome, you know, simplistic framework for understanding. You invented a gizmo, but what does it actually do? What does it replace? So um, I probably gave away the lead, but he asks, it's about asking people why um, why are they drinking a milkshake in the morning? And it's like, well, I have a 1 hour commute. It fits in my hand easily. It's really easy and it tastes really good, you know, compared to breakfast sandwiches and all this other stuff. So it's really understanding what does that job do. So if you're a milkshake manufacturer, you'd all of a sudden see all these sales, but you wouldn't understand why people are buying it unless you really did that research to ask them what's going on. Top three competitors. So what were their key unique differentiators for each? Who are the key physicians involved with those companies? What papers have they written? What was sort of their upbringing? So you can sort of understand um, what their line of thinking is. And what's the fundraising history? A lot of those incubators, when I talk about incubators, it's like Mars. I work out of Invest Ottawa. There's Communitech. There's all these great places in Ontario, many in, you know, Alberta and other provinces across Canada that have access to, say, PitchBook or other things. Take a look at how those companies have fundraised so you understand what stages they're at. Because a lot of people will make noise on their social channels to make themselves a lot more established than they are. So you can use this data to understand what trajectory they're really on and where they're going. You can also do that with other medtech companies. You know, the three companies I talked about earlier today, or even others that you know in your ecosystem, and just look up at who's invested in them and how do they go about things, right? To really understand what that trajectory was like. But doing it with your competitors really helps because you get a good understanding of where they're at and how much, you know, dry powder they have to go execute on different things. How to find customers. So trade shows, there's large national shows, but I don't recommend that at this stage. It's really those hotel conference room shows that are extremely valuable at this stage. I would probably not even go to any of these other small regionals or large nationals. That's me. I'm just trying to be most capital efficient, you know, entrepreneur that I can be. Those hotel conference room shows, you're going to get intimate conversations that will lead to results. Research papers, that's another area to find customers. You know, Ahmed, I read your paper on this topic, found it really fascinating. Would you have 20 minutes to talk about it on Zoom or Teams? You'd be surprised at how strong that hit rate is when you do that. What are the industry news? So make sure you're reading all the industry papers that are out there. There's Fierce, there's DAIC for cardiology. There's MedTech Gadget. There's all these different things out there that you can sort of understand what's going on out there. I see a question on how to get intel on competitors. You know, when you're a young company in this pre-seed or even up to Series A stage, I do a lot of sleuthing. I mean, in this internet age, you can do a lot. From using those incubators, like I said, with PitchBook, and getting any other market reports you can that cover those competitors, very valuable. They even look at patents through that lens, but you can also use Google Patent to look up some of their patents and understand what trajectory they're on as well. Seeking Alpha, you can get if they're a public company, you can get their transcripts to their quarterly earnings calls, things like that, and understand what they're doing. Documentation details. I'm not sure what documentation details are specifically, but a lot of the things I've mentioned so far are quite valuable in understanding the strategy of the company. And then going to these trade shows and even just asking, or when you talk to the physicians about their research papers, ask about different competitors if you're at that early stage because you're trying to learn. Advisory board members, they're typically more experienced and they can help provide a lot more insight as well, especially with their own lens. Twitter or X used to be very valuable to get competitor insights, but also just physician workflow insights. Less so now, just because of the way things have transitioned at that company. But there's still quite a bit out there on X to go through. You just have to know how to find it. Onco Daily is one hashtag. EPEEPS is another hashtag for electrophysiologists. There's different things you can go through and see what people are posting. It's just not as much as there was in 2014 to 2020. Another area for your competitors is the MOD database. Understand what complaints are being filed, and you can read quite a bit and get a lot of great insight and detail. And someone's just on, mute them here. As you do all this, you start to formulate a process and turn it into a more formal process. But, early stages, you can do this pretty informally. And I wouldn't say do it too often. Do a big dive to start, but then you want to not go, you don't want to be obsessed. You sort of want to just do it once in a while to update your knowledge. Let's look at how to speak to customers. So this is something I notice a lot of people could improve on. It's building a relationship with you. That's the goal here. So I'm talking to Dr. Jones. The key is to build a relationship with Dr. Jones. That's what I want. You're going to have, when you have a relationship with someone, you get a little bit out of it and you give a little bit with it. So spend some time learning about them, what motivates them, where they're going in their career, all that stuff. Learn about their view of the problem in the market, because you're going to have your perception, but you really need to understand their view. And that view is going to be formed by many different things. In the US, it's going to be formed by reimbursement, geography, socioeconomic factors in that geography. There's going to be a lot of different things. Introduce them to you and your idea. So once you start understanding what their problems are, if you're at the stage where you have some kind of rough prototype or something, you can start to look at introducing them to you and your idea. If you start the conversation with just talking about your idea, they're going to lose interest and just sort of go, I don't really care anymore. And thanks, but I'm done with this call. So you really want to understand do they view the problem the same way that you do and that you've researched, or is it a little bit different? Introduce your product and how it touches on their view of their problem, right? And you bring it back to that. And it sets the stage for proof of your ability to execute, because you have this meeting and you say, in 3 months, in 6 months, I'm going to follow up to show you where we're at, to show the progress that we made and get your feedback on X, Y, or Z feature. So you can really set the stage for building that relationship, which then is going to be needed for that seed stage and that Series A stage. So what you want to do at this stage is develop a script. This is a script that we use, and you're not going to use it verbatim on a call, but it gets you in the mindset of how you're going to structure the phone calls, from an intro to the company, to discovery questions on understanding what their problems are, to a demo and what you want to focus on and tie it back to their problems and needs. Q&A back and forth that usually just happens, naturally, not in a sectioned part of the conversation. But then what's your call to action? At this stage, it's going to be, I'm going to follow up to you in 3 months and talk about what we've done in those 3 months. In a later stage, it's going to be different. It's going to say, I'm going to follow up and see if you're ready to do a pilot. What are some questions? I thought I'd provide some of these. So what tools do you use today? What's your workflow? Asking about workflow is the most important thing. It gets people talking, it gets their opinion as part of it, and they're gonna like that they get to talk about themselves and their opinion. And that's not just with physicians, that's with nurses, that's with anyone that you're interacting with at the hospital or the clinic. How did you learn about that workflow? So different schools, as you go through residency and fellowship and everything like that, are going to teach you different things. So how did you learn about that workflow that helps you see already at a Series A stage later on, you know, if Ahmed went to Sunnybrook for his fellowship and I know he uses that workflow, then I know, you know, they train a lot of people. I'm going to want to go to that and win that business because then all those people that train on my product will want to take it to the sites that they end up at a later date. What new tech has enabled uh, you to improve your workflow? How is reimbursement changing your workflow? So reimbursement's always changing, especially this day and age, especially in the US. And so how is that reimbursement changing your workflow? CMS is giving less dollars per procedure code, or CMS is moving to value-based care offering. So you can't just do fee for service anymore. You have to have less appointments and understand what the patient's doing at home. So how is that reimbursement change affecting the way you operate? What area of the workflow do you wish you could improve? A lot of people have aspirations, you know. I never thought I could order my Starbucks coffee from my phone, right? But if someone asked me, you know, maybe 2012 when we had smartphones, I'd say, hey, that'd be great if I could order not just my pizza from a website, but my coffee. Where do most companies spend time innovating your workflow? So they already work with companies. Where are people focused on? Especially at these early stages, you can ask these more educational questions. A lot of companies will have a domain expertise and they'll focus on one area of the procedure and then start to acquire companies that move them to be more vertically integrated. So this is a good way to understand where companies are focused. That's another great way to get intel on competitors without saying, tell me about Cardinal Health and, you know, all these different companies. Who else should I speak to about this workflow? So that's great that Dr. Jones has this workflow, that you have this workflow. Does everyone else use this workflow? What do your colleagues do? Do you have a colleague you could put me in touch with? Can you introduce me? Nothing better than that. Then repeat that 100 times. Like that's all you have to do. Repeat 100 times and you'll start to form an understanding and sculpt an understanding of what the problem truly is. And speed to that 100 is critical. If you do it in a year, it's too long. If you do it in a few months, it's better. It's tough to get people's time, but just you have to be relentless in just getting their time. Call to action is important. So I'll follow up in 4 to 6 months to let you know how things progress. You don't want to just let that relationship die on a vine. So keep things going. Geographic diversity, you want to get different people from different countries, different regions, different states, different provinces to understand how they are affected by that category for the problem that you're trying to solve. What's the age diversity? So you want to get older people, you want to get younger people, talking about fellows. What's the tenure diversity? So like, you know, where are they in their career? Are they really high up and not really doing as many procedures per se? You know, like different things are important. So repeat that 100 times and just really, you start to get a script like I showed you on a few slides ago on what questions to ask and constantly evolve that. It's an iterative thing. I think sometimes within science and engineering, we can kind of get stuck to try and get things perfect. With sales and marketing, nothing's ever perfect. You can screw up. You can just try to minimize the number of screw ups and learn and just constantly be evolving those questions and editing those documents. The emails I send, sorry, the emails I send out, reach outs, I call them, the number of times I tweak them, I can't even count. It's just, you're always trying to go, I'm not getting as many hit rates on this email. I'm going to alter the language a little bit. Marketing, So this slide is a sort of a summary of the pre-seed stage. So marketing, you want to look at a website and a basic one. Don't spend more than $100 getting a domain and whatever you need to do. Get a website that's sort of skeleton and bones. Read and highlight 50 clinical papers. I like to use Excel to summarize it. And that way you have a great way to reference back and understand, control F and find some key facts, because you're going to be constantly updating your website, your sales outreach emails, your pitch decks. So the more you structure that knowledge and put it into a database of some sort to look it up and reference it in your memory, can be very helpful and save you time, because speed is the most critical thing in a startup. Market research complete and summarized. So make sure you get all those reports from different incubators and sort of synthesize all that information. You have social pages established. Doesn't have to be very bold and constantly updated, but enough to get some social presence that you're a real thing. Logo, some brand guidelines. You can get that pretty cheap. You can even get that for free. Doesn't have to be crazy at this stage. You can always rebrand later on. And then a monthly newsletter, probably the most important thing. And I bucket that under our marketing. Some people might say it's finance, sometimes, whatever it is. Monthly newsletter is the most important thing that we started doing. My co-founder said, yeah, we need to do this, because he's very experienced in building companies. And we did it, and we've had a monthly one go out every month since, I think it was about March. And you'd be surprised at how much traction and insights, and just you're establishing credibility among your supporters, people that are interested in investing. And maybe there's physicians or nurses or clinical staff that are part of it as well. Go ahead, Lillian. I could use a break. So
Thank you. I just unmuted myself. Oh, very good. So just out of curiosity, you said website basic is less than 100. And can you tell me like what are the place that I can do? I saw them advertising. Is that GoDaddy or is there any more official ones would you suggest?
yeah, it's interesting. There's a few out there. I said 100. It's probably more like 200 now that I think about it, two or 300, but like a year subscription. So you can do it through Wix. You can get the domain from GoDaddy. You can do the website through GoDaddy. Wix Squarespace, I think it's called. WordPress. I find, we just got ours updated, and the guy that did it said WordPress and Squarespace are the most common. Ours is on Wix, so it is what it is.
So Wix, how to spell it?
Wix.
Wix.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now
Um,
they make it so easy nowadays for you to, to do a very basic website. It's not overly complicated. Um, but eventually you'll want to upgrade it, but we'll talk about that later.
okay, wonderful. And also, just out of curiosity, when you are doing those like your set up your company name, do you need to find like do search to find that there is no other companies the same name? Like where do you find those information?
Yeah, it's a great question. I won't go too deep on that, because it's less related to maybe there's other talks that cover that. But what I would
Yeah.
say is you can do trademark searches and things like that. For me, I took a physician's name, took the phonetic spelling of it, Dr. Renee Laennec, and I saw it was open across the board on Google searches and trademark searches. So I would say, that's one way to go about it, and then you can go from there. Sound good? Great. And so for sales at this point, you want to have 100 customer interviews and make sure you document them, put them on paper somewhere, Word doc or your notebook, whatever it be. 30-second pitch script is fine-tuned. A 3-minute pitch script, you have that as well. Basic CRM, you can use Excel. I started with Excel. I wish I moved to HubSpot sooner. I think they have a free version, which is very basic, but it's enough to get some data captured. And they automate things a lot better than what you can do with Excel. And then, maybe you might have a beta user or an early stage type of user. That's a complete optional stage, but the previous 4 items, you need to have that as you're exiting that sort of that pre-seed stage. It'll be tough to do anything in terms of exiting pre-seed without having all of this done. And so this is where I talk about sales is different. I consider this sales, the 100 customer interviews, the 30-second pitch script, the 3-minute in the CRM, because um, that's a to me, it's more sales, it's more relationships, it's more selling yourself and things like that. The basic CRM HubSpot, you'd have to look it up online. I can't remember. I think it's free actually. So at the end of the day, you have a functional prototype or MVP from a company perspective, clear problem solution fit, and initial feedback from some of those key opinion leaders or potential customers. And I think if you did this as a startup at a pre-seed level, you'd be in a good position to position yourself to investors or even to, depending if it's digital health and not as regulated, or if it's, a med device, you're gonna have different stages of being with customers, but you can get a sense of what I mean by where you should be at the end of pre-seed. Let's looking at time here, trying to go quick. Looking at seed stage, typically about 12 to 36 months of being alive as a company. Typically between 1 and 5 million, and that's from angel groups, VCs, or grants, things like that. The use of funds, connecting pilot studies, clinical validation, advancing product development, building small sales and marketing team. Even then, I don't know so much about that. You might have a fractional sales leader or a fractional marketing leader, but typically you're the one as a founder doing a lot of this. And then more robust business operations and expanding IP. So what you're trying to do at this stage, you have a prototype, you have an ideal customer profile based on those 100 interviews you did, and you have an understanding of the regulatory, et cetera, required. And I'm going to leave that from another talk. Your goal now is to find those 3 to 5 ideal customers to use your product in a real life scenario. That's how you're going to learn at this stage. And often what's overlooked at this stage is trust and credibility. 2 things that you established in the pre-seed stage 8 months ago when you interviewed those 100 clinicians, whether they're nurses or physicians. So now you're going back to them and they're going, oh, wow, Will's still coming back to me. He's still at it. He's still progressing forward. And since I last saw him, he only had a few maybe Figma versions of his app. Now he's got a fully coded, launched app on the App Store for me to check out. So you really establish that credibility that you can execute and that you're here for the long run. So where do you start? You look at KOLs, you look at centers of excellence, associations that are out there, primary research to understand who's the big thought leaders in this space and reaching out to them. Industry partners, who's adjacent, who might have adjacent needs to the product that you're selling that might put you in touch with people, and fellows. They're the younger physicians that they're going to really be the generational shift on how things are done in the future because they were brought up in a different era than the previous generation. And so they're going to have a more digital focus, or how do we improve this workflow? Because they're going to get there and want more and better. And it's important to understand what is the why for each of these users. So that's every call you go into, understand what's the why. Why are these people waking up, and what's going to motivate them to talk to me and to use my product? So what you want and what they want, and you want to try and find that win-win in the middle. Looking at who's the ideal customer? What, you got to articulate those problems, where, how they get that info, why, you got an understanding of the why they might have interest, and then how it's articulating your commitment that started 8 months ago. So you can reach out. Here's a basic, reach out that you can send out. I'm not going to read it verbatim here, but you can see it's short. The bullets help you focus your eyes into what's there. This font is a bit weird that I'm using, but there's a question mark here and I usually leave it for the trailing edge of any paragraph, whether it be in the first paragraph or the last paragraph, because it catches the eye and someone goes, I know the answer to that question, fire back an email. And once I have you corresponding to me, now I can keep reeling you in. So what's important to go in the email, who you are, why they should be interested. So we're on a mission to empower patients by improving care delivery through clinical team efficiency and enhanced patient outcomes. So that's why they're interested. Why us? Because we have a platform that's designed to extend the clinic. What they get, you could be part of our beta trial program where you'd get free access to the latest technology. The call to action is that we're starting this in Feb 2025. Do you have time next week? Like, let's get going on this. And then trackable extra info. So within HubSpot, if you send the email and it connected to your HubSpot to your email, you can actually see who's opened your email, who's clicked things. So you can see down here, I can click my website. I can click this link to get to the App Store. And the benefit there, you can actually see who clicked. And if they clicked, that means they're even more engaged. So now I write back to them, let's set up a time to talk. And if you're wondering, all the shoe ads you get in your emails, all the clothing store ads, everyone is doing this. They're tracking every single email you open, how much time you spend on it, where you're looking, and what you're clicking. And then that's why you all of a sudden get another follow-up email and a drip campaign. And so all of this can be automized at this stage, in an early stage, especially in the sales side. Maybe you're not doing that, but there are ways to do that. And people do that. They set up the automation so that if I reach out to Ahmed and he opens the email, now 3 days later, I want you to automatically follow him on LinkedIn or add him as a connection. So I don't know if you notice on LinkedIn, that's why it's getting a bit crazy, because a lot of people use these automation softwares to do that, which it's a thing. I'm just saying it's possible, but not something I do myself. Why no responses? So you can expect a 5 to 7% hit rate on return emails and calls, which I think as a engineer, scientist, student, just human being, can be kind of demoralizing that you don't get many hits on your email, but it's normal. People are getting bugged all the time. It's just normal. And so at this stage, when you're in seed, when you're starting to sell, and you're not in pre-seed asking about the problem and their thoughts on the problem. Now you're in seed stage where you're looking more at like cultivating that sale relationship. Some of these cold outreaches, they just don't go anywhere. And so just be comfortable with a low hit rate. It can be very tough for a founder because you quit your job, you spend a lot of money, you raise a lot of money, friends and family money potentially as part of this, and then you're getting tough feedback, or you're not getting the breakthroughs that you want. People aren't jumping out of their seat to just throw money at you for your product. It can be tough. And so it's just important to sort of level set yourself there. So important to do to combat that. Did they receive the email? And that's where HubSpot comes in. Shows you that they opened it, how many opens. If you see a lot of opens, probably means that they forwarded it to others, which means they're even more engaged. Is it the right person? Did you do enough homework on the ideal customer? Sometimes you'll realize that that wasn't even open, or it was open but not responded, because maybe they're not the right person. Maybe it's not the right time either. So come back in 3 months, send them another email. Maybe the problems aren't relevant. So maybe you didn't do enough homework, or you're too early in the stages to understand what the real problems are for them. So do your homework, research papers, go to conferences, especially those small ones, because the conferences are those talks, those panels are where they're going to share a lot of deep insights on that problem. And if it's not the problem that you're looking at, it's the problem that they're looking at. That's the problem that exists in their world. So yours is maybe a nice to have, but this problem over here is a must solve problem. So no matter how many times you email them about the nice to have solution to a nice to have problem, they only care about the real problem at hand. Don't be afraid to ask them why no. You're human. Just say, "Oh, appreciate it, Dr. Jones. Why why are you, is this not relevant right now? Is it not valuable enough?" Sometimes it's just a vague plan. Your go to demo or go to pilot, and the pilot process is too vague. You didn't establish enough intel into what that looks like, and they're not willing to go to bat for you. Or there's no credibility in the company to execute. You followed up after 6 months and you didn't really progress. They're not going to start investing time in you. Yeah, and great point. Need to stand out and give a reason to open in your subject line. Subject line is one of the biggest things I change on my emails out. And I think that's really important. There's now software that's out there to help you tailor that, which can be helpful. And I know a lot of people might use AI to help them open chat GPT and all that. Just find a way to put personal touch on it too after you do that, because I get a lot of people wanting jobs and they reach out to me and literally it's almost verbatim the same message that's being sent to me. So by different people. So, you know, customers are going to see right through that too. Uh, how frequently do you follow up with these people without being viewed as pushy? It depends. I mean, I you have to not care what people think about you. You have to be respectful though. I think you just have to find a way to understand when someone's not interested and when someone's busy. Um, but there's no harm in, I had one person not respond back, and then 3 months later I said, just following up, we made these updates. If you're interested, would love to keep the conversation going, and if not, let me know why not. Is it not relevant right now? Things like that. And when you when you're a bit more vulnerable with that kind of response, they won't view you as pushy. They just view you, we're trying to do business. And so people, you got to remember these people, these clinicians, nurses, everyone are hounded nonstop by professional salespeople all the time. So the fact that you think you're being pushy, you're probably not at all. So at the end of seed stage, you're looking at, professional website, probably in the 10 grand range that you're spending because you want to look nice and professional. Clinical study is probably underway for your product, and you're looking at what you're going to do with marketing to get that out there. Social and Google advertising is probably underway just to help build your mind share. Formal competitor analysis process is typically underway, even if it's not documented of what you do. You just built out a quarterly process that you do a deep dive on competition to see what they're at. I mean, it's as simple as looking at their website once a quarter, especially for young companies. I know a company that raised 40 million that's in the adjacent space as us, and they totally changed their website, and it was a reflection that they didn't find business model traction, and so they had to actually adjust their business model and that showed on their website. Routine content strategy. So it's important to start building out your SEO so you can get an SEO consultant or advisor through one of those incubators. They can give you insights. A lot of medical device companies, digital health companies do really poorly at SEO. They're typically not doing it at all. So that can be a strategic advantage for you. It's a really long process to getting a sale, but it's a shorter process to getting at least some mind share when people search for, you know, medical inventions. It's like, oh, medventions popped up, And then a conference presence, you're going to have something, whether it's typically going to be a small table top. It's not going to be a nice, beautiful booth. From a sales perspective, at the end of seed stage, you have a defined beta program. You probably have up to 300 customer interviews documented, 30-second, 60-second, 3-minute, 5-minute, 10-minute, 30-minute pitch script ready to go. And it's typically only like one or two of your founders that have that, but someone's got it really solid because you're doing either pitch competitions or you're pitching to investors or you're just constantly talking to physicians. And that pitch to those stakeholders is slightly different, but at the same time, a lot of it is the same around the problem and the product. But you really need to, someone's headed to the washroom from a panel. You want to tell them a little bit about what you're doing. You have 30 seconds. Someone's sitting next to you at the bar before the big dinner. You have 5 minutes to share what you're doing, right? So you really got to have those down pat in your mind. It takes practice. Robust CRM and sales funnel, so you start to have a lot more process to what that CRM looks like in the sales funnel. I will not stress enough that the top of the funnel, like you need to be pushy. You need to fill the top of that funnel, that awareness stage, that discovery stage, as much as possible. So the awareness can come from that social and Google advertising and SEO development on your website and the content development, and also conferences and all that. But then you want to move them into the more that discovery and evaluation stage. And and cultivate them through to a purchase. You're typically awaiting regulatory submission, but shouldn't stop you from talking about your product and building that pipeline in some way. You have to be careful based on the regulations, depending on what you're doing. But there's no harm in having conversations about building that pipeline. And then you have professional sales slides, brochure, etc. So typically the end goals here are early customer adoption or pilot, ideally paid pilots. So always try to do paid pilots, even if it's heavily discounted. That will get you a lot more respect among investors out there, even in the US as well. Clinical validation and regulatory clearance are sort of on the horizon. There's clear competitive positioning. You know where you fit in the market. There's signs of early product market fit. A published article is maybe out or on the way. And there's a KOL that's on board with what you're doing. Okay, a few more minutes here, and it's not too many more slides from here. So Series A, typically 24 to 48 months, looking at 1 to 5 million, maybe even higher than that, up towards to 10 million. Angel groups or VCs or grants, none of these are hard and fast rules. And that's why I show those 3 companies at the start, because you can bootstrap, you can raise money, you can sell off in Series A, you can sell off later on. Yeah, our founders at this stage, I'm going to assume that was at the seed stage. Yes, I see your follow-up there. I would hire maybe consultants at different times on a really short basis. Ideally, you have someone that has a bit more of a leaning towards wanting to learn that stuff. There's a lot you can learn just by reading. I knew nothing about SEO. I was in marketing, like not nothing. I didn't know as much about the tactical implications of SEO and applying it. And it wasn't until through the incubator I'm part of, they had a consultant who was very hands-on, and I learned a ton. And now I'm starting to build that out. So there's different avenues you can go, and it's about as a founder, being frugal and willing to roll up your sleeves and do anything. But you got to be mindful of where your skill set is. So ideally, you have someone on your team at an early stage that can dig into some level of ability, but eventually you will want to hire those people. And you want to hire people that have the breadth of skills and not just very narrow skill set. So at this stage, use of funds is really about conducting those, I wouldn't even say pilot studies, it's about I think I didn't copy the slides properly, but it's not pilot studies, it's about customers. 1 to 10 customers is what you're trying to build out in Series A. Expand your IP, etc. Start to form some processes and some repeat patterns. Oh, this goes to your point, Taljanovic, is at this stage, I mean, this isn't a rule. This is just me sort of putting a thumb in the air on what I think HR structure looks like in sales and marketing. Typically, you have the founders. I wouldn't say you have a VP of marketing. I wouldn't even say you have an upstream, because that's typically both of those held by the founders in some respect, one of the founders. Upstream marketing being more of the understanding of what the problem is from the clinicians, interviewing them, and teasing out what the product strategy is going forward. That's typically founder level stuff at this stage. But then downstream, you may hire someone even on a part-time basis. You typically see a lot of people hiring like marketing managers that have the ability to actually do the work, or a junior marketer. But you as a founder either have a consultant or high level to help guide them, more from a career organizational work level and less about here's how you do things. So different flavors on how you approach that, but it's really situational. Sometimes at this stage, you have a senior clinical affairs member. I think that could be a founder too, right? That role could be a founder, where you have a more scientific person who can lead the development of what studies can look like and what are important, things like that. VP of sales, again, you may not even have that. You might have a fractional salesperson. You might have, I think it's really important to have founder-led sales for the early stages. Ideally, that's in the seed stage. And then at Series A, you're hiring these territory managers, like the lower level, strategic location geographically, uh, hiring these younger people or even sometimes more experience can be valuable as well. But you're hiring them to repeat the things you learned. They're going to build on it and make it even better, but you've already learned some of the things and they're not going out trying to learn it for you and then feed it back to you because it's going to be a tough cycle to get to. So, but at Series A, you should have that down. And so that's where territory managers come out. You need to replicate yourself and spend more time doing, founder type stuff and executive type stuff, while others are going out and just building that growth story for your product. This is how a process I've used in the past. Simple, just looking at the year, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, build it up with what are the top A level shows, like the big national shows. What are the B level shows, more regional, or even those hotel conference type shows? MG4 and tier one and tier two, maybe it's too complicated, but it's really about that product development pipeline. So you have, different product development lifecycle names out there. This is just milestone gate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4 is like a soft launch or like a alpha launch kind of thing. Tier one is like that's a new product line item. Tier two is just sort of updates, but it still goes through that product development lifecycle. It's because it's a med device. It needs to have that regulatory structure going through the product development lifecycle. And so it helps you understand that these are I didn't fill out this because it's fictitious, but Q3 we have a big conference and we have the launch for Q2 of the new product line. That helps drive your team internally to meet that timeline. It helps your marketing team understand what they need to get ready from a collateral perspective and social channels and marketing plan perspective. Then it helps your sales team get excited about what's going to come and helps them think about their plan and what they're going to build out as a leadership to help build out the plan for the next few quarters and even the year. But then also, how are they going to, on a ground level, territory manager level, what are they going to do with their accounts? So say they had 5 accounts, you know, oh, I think I'm going to take this product to this person, but this person's using this product like this for now. They're having some issues with it, but I'm going to leave it like that until that resolves. There's some changes at leadership at that hospital. So let's not go with a new product just yet. I'll do that in Q4 or Q1 next year. So that's the level of thinking that experienced territory managers will have as they look at roadmaps like this. The MG5, that's just a milestone gate 5, and that's the sort of that commercial launch where you can really make a big splash. And tier 1, tier 2, that's just me sort of breaking out the if you're at a bigger company, breaking out the things that are just little nice evergreen product updates and things that are tier 1 that are more revolutionary new product lines. The published studies that are coming out, when are they roughly coming out? I know it's never, set in stone, but at least you have a rough idea when those are coming out, as well as what's the promotional focus. So what are we going to think about for Q1 as a marketing team to share the message about what the company is doing? So theme X, theme Y, and so forth. I find this can be quite a helpful template that just sets the North Star for not just for the marketing team and sales team, but for the entire company to understand what are we doing this year. Processes and teams continued. So pragmatic marketing has a lot of great stuff. So at Series A, you're starting to build out a lot of these in a more formal way. Pricing sheets, distribution strategy. You probably have documents that are starting to build this detail out, especially if it's a regulated product. You need that kind of stuff documented. What the product roadmap is, I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm just showing you there's stuff that's out there that you can leverage. You don't have to do everything off of it. You can do parts of it, but it helps you understand that at Series A, you want to have a lot more structure to the way you're doing marketing and sales. And then this is, just high level view of more structure on clinical affairs of here's a list of topics we're covering for initiation and engaging physicians that might be interested in doing studies that are in development or in the clinic, studies that are in flight to publisher or publish. So you can start to see a roadmap of what that looks like. Roadmap for all the events. Series A isn't doing this. This is probably more like a larger company, but it's kind of complicated with all these colors, but they meant something to that company. And it's just showing different trade shows that are out there. And you can see there's a lot, and that's just cardiology, right? So there's a lot that's out there, and you just want to structure it so you got a view of the road ahead of you. So at the end of Series A, there's a lot of words here, but multiple clinical studies, podium presence and strategy, social and Google advertising is fine-tuned, and you're really the top search being covered. Product content strategy, driving inbound leads. Ideally, that you're at that stage. There's an enhanced conference presence. Maybe you have a booth or a small booth. Robust sales onboarding training. So you've learned what works when you sell, what the problem is, what the value prop is, what ideal customer profile, how you find them as a new salesperson. And your marketing team can develop strong sales onboarding. There's a strong quarterly sales meeting training and presence. So if not onboarding training, you go to that quarterly meeting as a marketing team and you're updating them on competitors, new product features, building interesting talks around what sales techniques work, etc. Customer feedback process is strong. Clinical advisory board is probably being formed as well on an annual basis to meet with them. And then sales, more customer interviews, defined program, defined pitch scripts, robust CRM sales funnel, professional sales slides, all that, regulatory clearance. The engines, you're pressing the gas pedal. So you're hiring experienced people, new people, and they both hit the ground running because you have all this stuff that's a robust team and a robust set of processes to get them up to speed. So you want 5 to 20 customers, repeat buying, scalable operational processes, publish articles, and evidence base with marketing collateral that you're leveraging. And then that's just my last slide for what we're doing today at Care, and it's an app to help cancer patients navigate their journey between appointments. So I would say that's it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, but I think we're around the time 5:30. So.
Well, thank you very much for such an insightful and a great presentation. I loved the entire presentation, to be very honest, and lots of key takeaways and foods for thought for sure. You shared excellent key points, and perhaps I do have a question. You talked about how to find customers and how important speaking to potential customer is, and how you should be speaking to customers. One thing I sometimes see with innovators and entrepreneurs in the startup world, while they are speaking with clinicians, sometimes the clinicians or key opinion leaders have very conflicting opinions or feedback, and clinicians can be quite opinionated. So, but this creates some sort of a challenge for startups and entrepreneurs. And you shared great insights on how innovators should be speaking with them and try and understand their views, and ideally get at least a few of them to agree to try the product. But I'm just curious to ask you if there are any specific strategies you found useful when innovators are typically faced with this dilemma of conflicting.
Yeah, that's great insight. I think my experience is cardiology is the most, and even then it's electrophysiology. Like they are so different. You'll talk to one electrophysiologist and they'll say, I only use X, Y, Z. You talk to the other and they say, I never use X, Y, Z. I only use ABC, right? It's like exact opposite. So I think what happens over time is you have those structured questions that I started to list out, and you can tweak them, but you try and put, more or less they sort of have a theme to them and they sort of stay consistent. You do enough of those interviews, you get different perspectives, and you document it well enough, you start to build out patterns on, the Agilis users. They typically use this ablation catheter, and this is their workflow. And it's not perfect, but it's enough to get a sense of what they do. And the more you can get, you start to get really deep and you think you've gotten there, but it's an onion and you keep peeling that layer back and you get more insights on how those specific users will sort of follow the herd. And that's where it comes to like understanding where they came from. So, UPenn infamously does their imaging mirrored, their ultrasound imaging mirrored in the heart, right? So whenever you see that at a conference, you know that, oh, they were trained at UPenn. Oh, at UPenn they use Accuson, and they use this, and they use this, and this technique for that, because those are the things that you want to try and look for to understand why they're thinking it that way. Now, when I go to talk to you, Ahmed, I'm like, oh, I noticed you had your ultrasound image that way. Did you train at UPenn? Now I've already shown interest in you and you're going to want to talk to me more, right? But having those structured questions, even though they slightly change and adjust and documenting it all, you'll be able to start to form patterns. And then you'll realize I shouldn't talk to this sort of group of customers. I should spend more of my time on this group because they fit my value prop more and they're probably more in those innovator early adopters.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you so much, Will. I
No
see
problem.
Alexandra has her hand up. Alexandra, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, so I was wondering how you facilitate the adoption of or yeah, the adoption and sale of an early product, particularly within the medical device space when your product might not be approved by the by regulatory agencies yet.
Yeah. It's probably covered in a regulatory talk in terms of like different routes you can go there, but preclinical studies are key. Like that's where you get insights. And that's not just for your engineering team to develop, but you can also do it with physicians that are more early adopter type physicians that want to see the latest technology. Preclinical study, that's one way to go about it. Without knowing the specific of the scenario you're thinking of, that's probably where I would go to. Another way is just dry models. So, get an engineering firm, or if you have an engineer on the team, to build up a dry model of, or you can buy it, but they're usually expensive, of the heart or of the path that they would traverse a catheter through the IVC and up to the heart, so that they could start to get a feeling for it. I remember I was with one physician at a cocktail sort of dinner party, and he took the catheter I had and he stuck it through the garnish, the little straw thing that goes through the garnish, just to see if it had the control. So, like, I know it sounds silly, but these people have crafted their career on their hands, typically, or their mind, and so they want to be challenged. And so finding ways to challenge them can be quite beneficial. When it's not cleared, those are some ways. There's simulators as well. If you have a product that's fairly baked and that makes sense, you can do a simulator. And I didn't touch on it, but maybe I should have. Education is critical. So if you come at product adoption from an education perspective, that can really garner a lot of sales long term. Does
Okay.
that help answer, Alexandra? Or
Yes, thank you. And just kind of a follow-up question, because you
yeah.
had mentioned, I was wondering whether you, from your experience, you've seen in certain areas where people are more likely to be open to being an early adopter of these technologies, like if you've recognized a pattern in your experiences.
Yeah. You can see it before you even talk to them. So are they writing papers? Do they have equity in companies that are out there? Sometimes you can try and find that. Do they talk about it on their social channels? Are they talking about other products on their social channels? Are they trying to be a thought leader? Like we're talking about, I love it's all important. I love physicians and everyone, clinicians, but some of them are more ego driven. They want to be seen as the best using the latest. And so you can get pretty quick to see who is using what and who might be an interesting target for that. You can also see who's on boards of other companies, to whether they be startups or not. So before you even have a conversation, you can get a sense. And then when you have a conversation, I've had conversations, we're in digital health. I've had conversations with some physicians in Canada, and it's like well, we only use this EMR system. I wouldn't even think to do it. And then I go to the US and I talk to a physician there and, oh, we use the same EMR system. This is how I would do it. Let's talk further. So you just get used to these conversations to understand who makes sense, continue on. And I don't, in my mind, it's never a no for those other ones. It's just they're just later on the adoption curve in my mind.
Okay, thank you.